So I'm here today with Jorge Davies, who will be performing with us at Wonder Valley 13. Good afternoon, George. Um,
Hello, sir.
how are you doing?
Doing great.
Awesome. So, what did you hear all those years ago that got you started musically to be where you are today?
Um, well, I was doing show and tell, so it was basically a little tape recorder that my dad got me when I was 6 years old. It was almost identical to this one, and I started. I put the tape backwards and slowed it down with my fingers and recorded noises. It wasn't about music in the beginning for me for quite a few years was really about sound and that stayed with me, that love of pure sound ahead of music really, or with it, but that's pretty much it.
Awesome. You know those little reel-to-reel tape recorders like the one that you showed. I had a buddy that used that as a fuzz tone. So he would put his guitar into it and overdrive the little circuitry in there, and then put
Yeah,
it into his amp, and that was his fuzz tone.
yeah, I still use, I buy Marantz cassette recorder players, those beautiful things that are built like tanks, and now you can't get them cheap, but 2 years ago you could, and I have like six of them because I'm a maniac, and they are incredible overdriven, and there's some of them have three heads, so you can use it as an echo unit if you want, it's really beautiful stuff. So I love tape. Are you a tape guy too?
Well, I had to be because at the time
Yeah,
that was what we had,
right.
and then the digital thing happened, and people were spending real money to buy DAT recorders and stuff, and now for $100 you can get stuff that's better than that, and
Yes,
it's just it's hard to believe, really,
it is
how
completely.
far and how fast that change happened. But
Yep, yep, yep.
so I was wondering, what is your process for building a piece?
So it goes back to your first question, which is that for me it's about sound. Which is why it's really difficult for me to get rid of instruments, because for me the songs I've written, and for a while between the time I was 17 and about 26, I wrote a couple hundred songs and these long pieces, and they were all tied into the instruments that I had at the time. You know, so every instrument I've ever gotten rid of, I've regretted because I go back and I really can't play that piece in that same way. I know a lot of people can, but for me, it's like I fall in love with what originally got me there, And I sold my Roland SH-101 synthesizer, regretted that just terribly. My Roland 606 drum machine, my every instrument, literally. I can go back and I listen to tapes and I go, why don't I have that? So
Well,
that's my beginning.
you kind of develop a relationship with this technology, and if you have certain things that are working for you with that,
Yes.
it's not quite as easy to replicate as a gauge of guitar strings or
No.
something like that. It's a different thing, and all this tech does kind of modify how you go about building things. And if you've been through the various grades of tape and digital and MIDI and all this programming from the 80s that was really esoteric with all these different layers of menus,
Yeah.
you know
The DX7.
yeah, the the metaphor there of playing games and having different levels that you had to go through is
Mm-hmm.
really kind of interesting because the 80s were all about levels. You had
Right.
all these different little tiny bits of information, and then you had to go down a couple different levels to modify that. It was really interesting. It was
You're
a
right. You're right. It was a whole zeitgeist, that that related to everything. And anybody who grew up on that loved it and could work with it. But for me, coming from tape and coming from I love knobs. I have stopped buying anything where I have to menu dive. I can't do it anymore. I can't. I feel like I can't create. You know what I mean? Like there's so much frustration involved in getting there, whereas your brain understands how to turn a knob and change a filter. It just it's like, oh yeah, I get it. I don't. It works the way your hands do. And you ever read Brian Eno's diaries?
No, I haven't read that yet. I was
I'm gonna
watching
I'm gonna
some
get
videos.
I'm gonna get you that diary. It's one of the greatest things ever. But one of the things he says is we went through a million years of developing all these physical connections to our brain in order to sit there with a mouse, moving it around a table, and that's what we're down to. And he hates that. It's like use all this stuff that we naturally have. This connection between the brain and the fingers, and
Mm-hmm.
but again, it depends. It's a generational thing, I think, and that I see my kid totally whipping through it. She's 11 and she has no issues with it. It doesn't,
Well,
so
it's her world.
it's her
Y-
world. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so. Is there a piece of gear that you will be using for Wonder Valley Experimental that particularly inspires you?
Well, I'm going to bring something out because it's show and tell. So I took
Ah,
the Casio SK1, and this is one I made, and it's very funky because I'm really terrible with my hands, but it does things that other things don't, which is with these screws coming out, you're able to change things on the fly. Most people put a patch bay and you have to pull patches out. With this, you use just alligator clips, and you can touch things, you can scratch them, and so it does what I love, which is it surprises me all the time. It's like I don't know where the hell it's going. Ordinarily, I would never use this on stage because it would scare the hell out of me. That it would go in any direction, and I wouldn't. But that's the good thing about what we're doing this year, right?
absolutely. And
That we're
that is
getting.
so cool.
Is that fun?
I think it's awesome. And the bolts are a great touch. The alligator clips probably hang on those really well.
They
If you had
do.
just pins, they might slip off. But the way alligator clips are, they'll
Right.
stay. They won't slide up and down or anything like
And
that.
the fact that you can do two at one time, and you can scratch at the bolts, and something has begun. Some people have begun using these things. I've noticed them now in a couple of instruments, but when I did this a few years back, I had never seen it. So I have one more thing to show you, which is a switch box. I was looking for this is like real low tech, old. I don't know, probably from the 1950s. It's a really nice switcher with
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I was influenced by the tape cutting that the guys who did Musique Concrète did.
Right.
That. And for me, it wasn't so much, oh, it's tape, but it was the fact that the pieces could turn on a dime.
Yeah.
That suddenly you were in another universe. And I, for the last 10 years, have been just wanting to add that to my music. I don't want to stay in one place. If I want to move, I don't want to modulate to the next place. I want to just jump there. And so I've been looking now for a long time for a switcher that would switch between sounds and synthesizers and whatever fast and without clicking or popping. And I struggled to do this. I tried 30, 40 different things, and a mixer is just not, my buddies were telling me, well, just push the buttons on a mixer. It's just not the same. This motion, and you'll see me doing this in the piece I'm going to do, just being able to get out of one, back into another, into a third, back into the beginning. It sounds like nothing, but it's really musical, it's really useful. And these things sell on eBay for about $30 if you can find them.
That's awesome. Wow, that is inspiring. That's very cool. And one more question, and that
Yeah.
is, how does living in the desert influence your music?
I think the biggest influence for me has been, I have a house up on the mountain, and it's super quiet. The first few years I was here, I came here in 1991. I didn't know anybody, and I just made music. That's all I did. I would come when I would leave work in LA, and be out here and just be outside, and come in, make music, and then step outside. Not stepping outside into noise, but stepping outside into quiet. And I think it allowed me to sort of expand my wings creatively. Lose fears and be a little wilder with what I did.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us on Zoom for this festive afternoon. And
totally excited to do this, man.
Cool. Well, we're very excited to see what you're up to with these things. We're going to end the interview now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, buddy.